Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Gray from Shoreline, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, EMV and Beyond. Today we have Billy Tran, one of our resident EMV experts, and he's going to take a look at the post-EMV liability shift in America. We'll talk about what's ahead, the public's chip card perception, including the reality of the checkout experience, also where mobile fits into the equation, and card not present transactions. At the end of the webinar, we'll have a little time for Q&A. So any questions you have, you can just type into the box in the corner, and we will go over those at the end. We're also going to be recording the webinar and placing it on our website, as well as sending a PDF out in the next few days. So I think we're ready to learn more about EMV and beyond. I'm going to hand it over to Billy. Welcome, Billy. Thank you for helping us today.
Hi, Amy. So thanks to everyone joining and taking the time to listen to this webinar today. As Amy mentioned, the objective today is to give you all kind of an update regarding the ongoing US EMV migration, as well as an introduction to some emerging payment technologies that we see coming in the horizon. So before we get started, just a quick introduction about Shoreline for those who aren't familiar with us. We are an independent provider of card production and personalization services, serving primarily community and regional financial institutions for the past 25 years. In May of last year, Shoreline was acquired by Gemalto, and Gemalto is a global technology company and a leading provider of EMV products around the world. In fact, each and every year, Gemalto produces in excess of 700 million EMV chip cards serving financial institutions all around the world. So obviously, we are really excited that this technology is coming to the US and having the opportunity to talk to you today about the things we see coming in the pipe. So by now, I guess most of you listening today are well aware that the US EMV migration is well underway. The October 1st liability shift has come and passed, and we as an industry have come a long way and made tremendous progress in terms of providing the infrastructure required to support EMV. In fact, the latest estimates that we have is that roughly 575 million EMV chip cards will be issued to the market this year alone. That's more than double all previous years combined over the last 4 years. So clearly, many cards are being issued to the marketplace by financial institutions throughout the US. That said, all those cards in the market don't mean very much if you don't have a point-of-sale infrastructures where consumers can use their card. And the good news is that lots of progress has been made in that regard as well. The latest projections we have is that 6 out of every 10 point-of-sale terminals in the US will be able to support EMV chip transactions by the end of this year. And the projection is that those numbers will only increase, topping off at roughly 90% by 2017. So that said, I realize that some of you listening today may not have yet started your EMV programs, and certainly while you are a bit late, it's never too late to get started. The challenge that we hear in our discussions with financial institutions in the US is that many of them who haven't launched their EMV card programs yet are stuck in a little bit of a bottleneck. Perhaps the card production or personalization provider they work with hasn't done the legwork or is not ready in terms of the certification integration required to launch chip card programs. So that's something that Shoreline has really worked hard to do over the past 18 months, and that's really highlighted in our Processor Ready program. So over the past 18 months, Shoreline has worked with all the major processors across the US to not only integrate for EMV, but do all the certification and approval processes required to launch EMV programs in a sort of turnkey manner. And so what this processor program really is, it's a turnkey EMV program that available to financial institutions, small and regional financial institutions that are kind of off-the-shelf packages for not only central issuance but instant issuance as well. And these are all kind of Durbin compliant and pre-approved profiles that financial institutions can come to us, and we can get them onboarded and get cards out the door in a relatively quick period of time. So that said, looking forward in terms of the payment technologies that we see coming along in the next months and years, there's certainly a lot of terminology that's out there and a lot of new things that are coming into the market every day. And there's probably some level of confusion around all those different technologies. So in order to simplify that, what I've done is we like to categorize them by their function. And so what you see here today is kind of a 2x2 matrix. And at the top of the matrix, you have security and convenience. And those are kind of the two main drivers for the new emerging payment technologies that we see in the marketplace. But those drivers don't necessarily address the same consumer experiences. So on the left, you'll see some of these technologies are meant to address card-present or face-to-face transactions that a consumer would conduct at your standard brick-and-mortar store. And some of these technologies have been developed with the aim of securing and providing convenience towards card-not-present transactions for e-commerce channels. So if we think about EMV, EMV clearly is a technology that was developed specifically to address security for card-present transactions. And I guess as cards get issued to the marketplace, many of you listening today have probably begun or made your first EMV transaction in the last few weeks and months. And in that, you've probably all begun to realize that your standard contact EMV transaction is significantly slower than what you may be accustomed to with regard to your traditional magnetic stripe transaction. In fact, it's a lot longer. So anecdotally, the general consensus is that your average magnetic stripe transaction historically was about 8 seconds. Well, if you look at your contact EMV transaction, on average, the estimate is that they're about 12 seconds longer than your average mag stripe transaction. So the average contact EMV transaction takes about 20 seconds, which is, from a consumer point of view, doesn't seem like a long time, but you can imagine during the holiday shopping season, we have Black Friday coming up, and you can imagine sort of long lines at your local retailer, and those lines are only getting longer because every consumer at the point of sale is now having to dip their card and wait for that transaction to complete in a fashion that's much longer than they're accustomed to. So that said, one of the technologies that we see coming to the marketplace in the very near future is contactless payment, or more specifically, contactless EMV payment. And as this technology emerges and comes to the marketplace, we don't see it specifically as a card technology. We see contactless payment being enabled on all types of form factor, whether it be on the mobile device, a wearable, or even stickers that you can attach to everyday objects. And this is something that we see has been the trend globally all around the world. So while contactless EMV may be new and emerging technology in the US, in fact, it's been around for quite some time and has been deployed all around the world. In fact, well over 2 billion contactless EMV products have been issued all around the world. In fact, in 2014, 40% of all EMV cards issued were contactless EMV cards. And actually, in 2014 alone, well over 900 million EMV dual interface or contactless EMV cards were issued to the market in all regions around the world. And so this is really the growing trend that we see globally. In fact, in Europe, MasterCard and Visa are actually mandating that the point-of-sale infrastructure the point-of-sale infrastructure in the U.S. must be, or in Europe, must be upgraded to support contactless transactions. And they're requiring that any merchant who's in the process of upgrading their point-of-sale must upgrade it to support contactless payment as well. And they've set those deadlines already, and hoping that to reach a deadline by 2020. So as I mentioned earlier, we don't see contactless payment as a card-only type of technology. We believe that as contactless payment begins to proliferate not only in the US but globally, it'll take the form of wearables and mobile devices. And so we've already seen that as early as last year. We worked with Barclays to launch what's called the BPay bracelet. And what this is a bracelet with a contactless payment credential stored inside the bracelet. And Barclays issued these products to their cardholders who were contactless users and attending special events such as soccer games and festivals. And what these bracelets did is they not only were loaded with the person's access to the event, but it also provided payment credentials. So the wearer of that bracelet could tap that bracelet to enter the festival, to gain entry to the festival, and then once they're in the festival, they could use the bracelet to pay for souvenirs, food, and snacks, and the like. And really, the feedback from Barclays has been overwhelmingly positive. Their consumers loved it. Not only did they spend more when they were at the event, but they continued using these bracelets after the event to make everyday purchases. So we see this as just the first of many pilots that we see, and more financial institutions will be looking at these types of opportunities to serve their cardholders in special event situations and the like. So in the US, as with the EMV migration, you can't just have contactless cards or EMV cards in the market. You need to have an acceptance infrastructure where these products can be accepted. And the good news is that all the work that's been done by merchants to upgrade their point of sales to support EMV won't be lost, because all those point of sale terminals that have been upgraded to support EMV also support contactless EMV transactions as well. That said, it's up to the merchant to determine whether or not they will activate the contactless portion of their point of sale infrastructure. So the capability exists, but it's 100% in the hands of the merchant to determine whether they want to enable contactless payment or not. And we see that many merchants are deciding to activate the contactless part of their point of sale, driven primarily by Apple Pay and the other mobile initiatives that are certainly gaining popularity with consumers throughout the US. And as the acceptance infrastructure continues to broaden for contactless payment, we see financial institutions also launching contactless pilots as we speak today. In fact, the majority of the top financial institutions that we have conversations with have indicated they are moving forward with contactless pilots at the end of this year and continuing on through the first half of next year. So going back to this 2x2 matrix, as I mentioned, EMV is a great technology that's been deployed specifically to provide security for card-present transactions. And on top of that, you have the contactless EMV, and that adds a convenience that consumers would come to expect. But that said, EMV was introduced specifically to address card-present or face-to-face transactions and to prevent the counterfeiting fraud that exists within those ecosystems. But what it doesn't do is really, it doesn't address card-not-present transactions or transactions for e-commerce. So if you look at kind of the overall fraud picture in the U.S., counterfeit fraud, which EMV is very good at counteracting, counterfeit fraud makes up roughly 37% of the total fraud that happens in the U.S. as we speak today. That said, it doesn't address card not present or online fraud, which makes up roughly 45% of the overall fraud. And our estimate is that as the U.S. begins to roll out EMV and becomes and EMV becomes ubiquitous, we believe that card not present type fraud or online fraud will become the predominant form of fraud in the US, and that's the trend we've seen globally all around the world. What you see here is kind of the fraud statistics and the evolution of fraud in different regions. So as you can see, after the Canadian EMV migration, counterfeit and lost and stolen fraud drop dramatically, but then you see card not present fraud increase and become the predominant form of fraud. And that's exactly what happened in the UK as well, where after the EMV migration, card not present fraud became the predominant form of fraud that they saw in that region as well. So online fraud is not necessarily a new problem. It's been a problem that's existed for quite some time. The challenge is there's been a number of solutions that have been proposed to the marketplace to address card not present fraud, but they haven't been necessarily very successful for a couple of reasons. A lot of these new technologies meant to address card not present fraud require a lot of integration by the online merchants, and many of the online merchants simply don't have the resources or the technical capability required to make that integration. And so a lot of that's one of the reasons that these types of technologies have failed. You can think of 3D Secure or MasterPass. All these are technologies that, in essence, require the consumer to provide an extra step of authentication prior to making a purchase. And so all of that, while it provides a high level of security, it's not exactly a great consumer experience. I mean, I think personally, as a consumer, every time I'm asked to remember an additional password to make a transaction, the likelihood that I actually complete that transaction decreases significantly. And on top of that, I may not remember my password, and so it makes sort of a disruptive and inconvenient consumer experience. So that said, I think the next step in terms of payment security really has to deal with providing both security and convenience for card not present transactions or online e-commerce transactions. So technology that we see coming in the very near future is what we call dynamic CVV cards. And what a dynamic CVV card is it's simply your standard EMV chip card, which can be used for contact and contactless transactions. But if you flip the card over on the back, there's a little display window. And what that display window is that display window is in the spot where you would normally see your CVV today. But that display rotates every 20 minutes or every period of time that can be determined by the financial institution. And so the CVV code rotates. And so as a consumer, you'll log on to Amazon or whatever retailer you like, make your transaction, enter your payment credentials as you would today, and when it comes to filling out that little CVV code, you flip your card over and you enter the number that appears on your card at that period of time. And so obviously it creates that higher level of security because that value is dynamic and it changes constantly, making it, even if someone was to copy down your account number and CVV number, it would not be relevant because they couldn't use it to make an online transaction within that period of time. So this technology doesn't necessarily need to be deployed in a card format. This can be deployed as a mobile application as well. So you can imagine the same type of consumer experience, but instead of going to your card to retrieve this dynamic CVV code, you could log into a mobile application which generates this dynamic CVV code, which you would use to then enter into your online merchant portal. So we've talked about, addressing security and convenience for card-present transactions, and then as well as providing security and convenience for card-not-present transactions. But there's also technology that you can deploy that helps you provide additional layer of security for your consumers, and we call that kind of security at the core. And at the heart of every payment transaction is your PAN number. You can't really conduct a payment transaction without an account number or a PAN number. And I think everyone in the industry generally agrees that the PAN number is probably the weakest part of the payment transaction as it exists today. It's very easy for someone to copy down your number or access this number through a data breach and use it to make a card not present or fraudulent transaction. So the idea is, what technology can you bring to secure the account number? And that's where tokenization comes in. And tokenization in itself is a great idea and can be used as a layered approach in your overall secure payment security infrastructure. So what tokenization is simply taking your standard account number, your funding PAN, and then through a tokenization service mapping it to a number of tokens that look very much like a PAN but can be used for only specific channels. So you would have a payment token that's used for online transactions. You would have a payment token that's loaded on your physical payment card. You could even isolate payment tokens for specific online merchants. That way, if a specific token is compromised, it doesn't compromise the rest of your payment credentials. And so this idea of isolating tokens for specific use cases really provides the extra layer of security that you can put on top of all the other actions that you're using to secure your cardholders. So that said, you know, the EMV migration is not in the past, but it's something that we live every day. But as we look to look forward in terms of payment security that's coming in the next months and years to come, it won't be just about providing security for card-present transactions. It'll be about providing technologies that offers convenience as well as security for both card-present and card-not-present transactions as well. So that's all I have in terms of prepared material today. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Amy, to see if we have any questions.
We do have some questions, and I have to say, Billy, that your explanation of tokenization was the most common sense one I've heard. It always is confusing to me. So I'm hoping everybody appreciated that, because it can be very confusing, that topic. One of our questions we have is back a little bit about the chips. Someone has asked, how long is the shelf life for a chip? They've heard it expires.
For an EMV chip card, I would assume that's an EMV chip. So, so the chips don't expire, but the chips, before they can be sold to a financial institution, receive a certification from a payment association, either Visa or MasterCard. And so, and that certification generally lasts about 3 years. And so, as your card manufacturer would need to inform you the life expectancy of that certification, but as long as once it's been issued into the hands of the cardholder, that certification becomes irrelevant, and then what supersedes that, the expiration date on the face of the card. So as a card manufacturer, you can't sell a product that has lost its certification or their certification has expired from the payment association.
We have a question about the actual implementation. How long is an implementation process for EMV chip migration?
So yeah, the end-to-end process of an EMV chip implementation is, we generally say, about 8 to 12 weeks. From defining the requirements and getting cards out the door, ordering cards, and so that really entails the end-to-end process of taking in an issuer's artwork, understanding the requirements, and getting cards out the door. We generally quote about 8 to 12 weeks, and that's something that we've been fairly consistent on, and that's been one of the benefits of our Processor Ready program. If you're working with a card provider who perhaps hasn't done the required integrations or certifications that are required, we've heard as long as 20 weeks or 30 weeks to implement a similar program. But one of the benefits of the Processor Ready program is that we've done a lot of that legwork already in advance. So when it comes to deploying cards into the market, a lot of those certification steps can be avoided. A lot of the initial legwork can be avoided, and that's why we can kind of shorten it down to this that 8 to 12 week time frame.
That's awesome. Billy, can you explain just for the benefit of everybody about Gemalto's stockpile kind of chip cards, where we kind of, it's like we're not going to be running out of chips. We've heard customers ask about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's a common concern. As the U.S. kind of migrates the EMV chip card, there's kind of a mad rush and an influx of huge volumes and capacity. And so there's generally two challenges that we hear as an industry, that a card manufacturer doesn't have the manufacturing capacity to issue chip cards. And the second challenge is that they don't have the chips in hand because they can't get their hands on chips. And something that Gemalto has done very successfully over the past 12 years or the past 12 months, sorry, and over the past years, is that we have the largest card manufacturing capacity in the world for EMV chip cards, and we have the largest supply chain for EMV chips as well. So globally, in the U.S., Gemalto operates one card manufacturing facility in Montgomeryville, Pennsylvania, but we also operate 18 card manufacturing facilities all around the world. And so globally, we have the capacity to produce something like 750 or 800 million chip cards every year. So capacity is not an issue for us.
That's good to explain, because I know we've gotten that question many times about, when everyone starts to come on board at the same time, what's going to happen, so that there isn't a capacity problem, because we can always move from another facility to get chips.
To get capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Then in terms of chips, I think the other great thing about Gemalto is that we are the largest issuer of EMV chip cards. We actually work hand in hand with the silicon and chip manufacturers every day, and we actually have massive safety stocks of chips that we basically stockpile all around the world. So even in the event of very high volume periods, we're able to sustain that with our safety stocks that we have in hand. A lot of, let's say, other card manufacturers in the industry, they don't have this kind of stockpiling process. Instead, they use kind of a spot order process, meaning they'll wait until they receive a PO from a financial institution before they actually order the chips. And when you do that, the lead times just to get those chips could be 30 weeks or 50 weeks, simply in periods of very high demand. And so something that Gemalto does, obviously, is to stockpile this, is so that we always have the chip stocks in hand at all times.
That's great. And I have a question here, and I think she is asking about the CVV code you talked about, and I think she's asking about the dynamic. She says, when can we expect to see the CVV code be available for card issuance? I think she's talking about the dynamic CVV code that changes. Is that something that's just in theory, or is that happening in other countries now?
It's a very new product, and you'll see those hitting the marketplace very soon. They're available today with Gemalto, and we are actively working with financial institutions around the world to launch pilots. So you'll start seeing them in the hands of consumers early next year.
Wow. Okay. So that just seems so high tech. It's amazing that. What about the part with the mobile phone where you can get the code on your phone and type it in? Is that something that's coming sooner?
That's available as well. So it's something that we see not as an either or, but as an and. So we see financial institutions that deploy the card version. They'll also deploy the mobile app just to give the consumer the option of both. But yes, both are products that are available today.
A question here about the merchants. Why are some merchants not turning on their EMV? They have the device, but they're still having cardholders swipe. Do you have any idea about that?
That's a good question. While they may have the hardware, the acquirer or processor that they work with might not have made the software updates or the activation updates that are required for that specific merchant yet. But yeah, usually you'll see, most of the big box merchants that you can think of have activated their EMV point of sale. But yeah, I think slowly but surely you'll see the market. The rest of the merchants in the ecosystem begin activating their point of sale. But it's very individual to that merchant, those merchants that haven't turned them on yet.
A question about the chip itself. Is there wear and tear on the chip? Like they said some card holders seem to wear out their mag stripe faster. Does the chip see wear and tear?
I guess it sort of depends on that particular user, but if you in terms of life expectancy of the chip, it exceeds generally the life expectancy of the plastic. So when a piece of plastic card, a magstripe card, sits in your wallet for any period of time, as through normal wear and tear, the plastic kind of breaks down, but the chip itself, I believe, can last, I think, 150 or 200,000 transaction cycles, and so that generally equates to a 7-year lifespan. So the chip itself can last a long, long time, probably longer than the plastic itself.
This is a question about contactless. How much more in dollars would contactless be? And will there be, a two-part question, will there be a deadline for contactless like you showed in Europe and abroad for everyone to switch over?
Yeah. So yes, contactless EMV cards are incrementally more expensive than contact EMV cards, and uh, the amount of of increment kind of varies depending on the volume. We don't see a liability or a mandate from the payment associations that will require contactless in the U.S. They've done so in Europe, and I think that'll be sort of the guinea pig as to whether contactless will be mandated in the U.S. But my general opinion is that a mandate won't be necessary for the U.S. because you see all these emerging mobile payment technologies kind of really driving the ecosystem to adopt contactless anyway. You see Apple Pay, you see kind of Samsung Pay and Android Pay all emerging, and with those technologies all available today, I think more and more merchants are going to adopt contactless simply because that's what consumers will prefer.
Well, great. Well, that looks like that wraps up our questions. If anybody has any questions for Billy that you think of later, please feel free to mail it to me, and I will get it to Billy, and we'll answer your questions. And we're going to have a PDF of this sent out to everybody on the call so you can review the deck. And also we're going to be putting this presentation, the recording, on our website, which is shorelinecards.com. And you can also go there to learn about all kinds of stuff with EMV and instant issue and card customization. So it's a good place to go, and we have links to Gemalto's site, so you can go to Gemalto's site to learn more. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Billy, about EMV. Just that I know that the Shoreline queue is building, so if you haven't started planning, maybe it's a good time to think about that. Would you suggest people do that out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage you to kind of work with your account managers and your Shoreline customer service reps just to get an idea of what your requirements are and start making a plan.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Billy, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today and taking time out of your day. And have a great Thanksgiving, and hopefully we'll be bringing another webinar to you. I'm thinking maybe like the second or third week of January. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email me. But thanks a lot, and thanks, Billy, again. It was great.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.